In an unexpected moment that shook a quiet morning talk show in Los Angeles, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the actor, the wrestler, the symbol of strength and resilience, found himself holding a cream-colored envelope. The seal was gold, pressed deep into the paper. The camera lingered on it. The host spoke quietly. "Dwayne, we received this letter just last night. It came from Burkina Faso, from President Ibrahim Traoré." The Rock, who had just been joking moments ago, froze. His massive hands dwarfed the envelope, yet it shook slightly in his grip. He was a man who had conquered rings and screens, smiled for countless interviews, and inspired millions with words like, "Just bring it," and "hardest worker in the room." But this moment felt different. "Ibrahim Traoré," The Rock said slowly, voice low and cautious. The host nodded. "He sent this for you. It arrived with a request that if you felt comfortable, we would read it aloud." The president said, "This is a message from one boy to another, a boy who watched The Rock when he had no hope, and a boy who became a president to give others that hope too." The Rock drew a long breath. Suddenly, the room felt too quiet. "Go ahead," he said quietly. The host unfolded the letter. Its edges bore faint stains, dust from another continent. He began to read. "Dear Mr. Dwayne Johnson, my name is Ibrahim Traoré. Today, I am the president of Burkina Faso, a land where the sun is hot and the nights long, and where countless young people struggle to find their place in a world that often forgets them. But before that, I was just a boy with no father, a boy with torn shoes and nowhere to run, a boy who found strength in a crowded room where an old television crackled with the sound of wrestling, a boy who watched you walk down the ramp with a raised eyebrow and a voice that shook the world. You were more than a wrestler to me. You were proof. Proof that strength can rise from silence. Proof that scars can carry glory. Proof that even a boy from nowhere can one day stand tall. Today, as a president, I carry your lesson in my heart. Not the lesson of victory, but the lesson of rising after defeat. The lesson of holding your head high when the world looks down. The lesson that the biggest victories are born from the deepest pain. This letter is not from a politician. It is from a boy, the boy you inspired. Thank you for reminding him that it's okay to rise. From one fighter to another. Ibrahim Traoré." As the words fell into the silence of the studio, The Rock bowed his head, his voice deep and strong faltered.
"Stop,"
he said quietly.
"Just stop for a second."
A faint shimmer crossed his eyes. The room was still. The sound of a camera lens focusing felt deafening.
"I've read a lot of things in my life,"
The Rock said, voice shaking.
"and I've met a lot of people. But this
He pressed the letter to his chest, swallowing hard.
is not about movies, not about wrestling, not about any of that. This is about a boy who refused to give up, a boy who became a man, a boy who became a president, and that boy remembered. He remembered when no one was looking."
He wiped a hand across his eyes, voice quivering.
"We have a saying in my family. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. President Traoré reminds us all why. To matter is not about being seen. It's about helping someone rise when no one else can."
The host nodded quietly as The Rock placed the letter down. The soundstage was silent. Even the camera crews exchanged glances, brushing at their own misting eyes.
I didn't come here expecting this,
The Rock said finally.
but I'll tell you this. President Traoré, my brother across the world. If you're watching, I'm with you. Whatever you're building for the next generation, whatever strength you're giving to those boys and girls, I stand with you. Not as an actor, not as a wrestler, not as a symbol, just as a man. Just as a boy who learned how to rise when he felt like falling.
The studio felt like a sacred space for a moment, where every person present felt the sting of vulnerability and the warmth of belonging. What started as an ordinary morning show segment had become an emblem of belonging, a reminder that strength knows no borders and no boundaries. That night, after the studio lights cooled and the bustling crew drifted away, The Rock sat in a quiet dressing room. The letter from President Ibrahim Traoré still lay in his hands. The room was dim, except for a single lamp. He pulled out his phone, heart beating harder than before a match, and pressed the international number scrawled across the bottom of the page. The line rang once, twice, and then, "Hello?" A deep voice answered softly. The Rock drew a breath. "President Traoré?" "Yes, this is he." "This is Dwayne Johnson, The Rock." A silence fell across the line. Not the awkward silence of strangers, but the quiet of two men finding words across a distance that felt like no distance at all. "My brother," Traoré finally spoke, voice shaking. "You called." "I had to," The Rock replied. "That letter, I had to. I watched you when I was a boy," Traoré said quietly. "In moments when I felt like giving up, I watched you rise. Not just in the ring, but in life. You gave strength to a boy with no name, no shoes, no father. And that boy became a man, became a president, because he refused to give up." The Rock was quiet, swallowing down a wave of emotion. He'd met countless leaders and superstars, but this felt different. This felt like a reminder that across oceans and borders, across language and circumstance, stories can save lives. "President Traoré," The Rock said, voice wavering. "You gave me a gift tonight. Not as an actor, not as an athlete, but as a man. To know that somewhere, in a room far away, a boy felt stronger because of something I said or did. That's worth more than every title I've ever held. Thank you." "Thank you, my brother," Traoré replied, voice deep and warm. "Thank you for reminding the boy I was that he could one day lead. And thank you for reminding the man I am that strength is still worth sharing." The conversation lasted an hour. Not about politics, not about movies, not about wrestling, but about fathers and sons. About the sting of loss and the beauty of belonging. The boy and the fighter discovered in 2 weeks later, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stepped out of a modest aircraft and into the blazing sun of Burkina Faso. No paparazzi, no press conference, just a lone runway, a small entourage, and the unmistakable figure of President Ibrahim Traoré standing tall in the dusty wind. They embraced like brothers, not politician and celebrity, not president and actor, just two men with scars that had shaped them. The Rock pulled away first, voice shaking. "You weren't lying," he said quietly. "This place, I can feel the strength here." Traoré smiled faintly. "It is in the air, my brother, in the people, the land, the struggles we bear." Their convoy traveled down long, dusty roads, weaving between bustling markets and neighborhoods where life felt both fragile and hopeful. The Rock waved as children smiled shyly, waved flags or called out. Somewhere deep inside he felt the boy he had been, a boy overlooked, unheard, pushed to the edges. Yet here, in the heart of Burkina Faso, he felt embraced. "These people," Traoré said as the car bumped along a narrow lane, "they have scars, but they have strength. All they ask for is to be seen. Not saved, not spoiled, not handed a miracle, just seen." The Rock nodded. "That's the hardest thing, isn't it? To be seen when you feel invisible." That evening, the president brought the Rock to a modest community center. No red carpet, no paparazzi, just a dusty courtyard and a group of children gathered under a tin roof. Their eyes lit up as the Rock entered. They weren't cheering for a blockbuster star. They weren't reaching out for autographs. They were looking at a man who came from nowhere and made it somewhere. "My friends," Traoré announced quietly, voice resonant, "this is the boy you've watched on screens, the boy who became a man, the man who refused to give up, the man who reminds us that no matter how low the fall, the rise can be higher still." The Rock stepped forward, brushing away a bead of sweat. The silence was deafening. Slowly, he sank down to one knee, looking at the children, some barefoot, some shy, some grinning wildly. "I don't have a speech for you tonight," the Rock said quietly. "I don't have a lesson. All I have is a heart that knows pain, and a voice that learned to rise. Whatever you carry, anger, grief, loss, or fear, don't run from it. Let it teach you. Let it guide you. Let it make you stronger, not for glory, not for pride, but for the people you love and the land you walk. You're strong, you're worthy, and you're never, ever forgotten." A boy with deep, serious eyes stepped forward, holding a hand-drawn picture of the Rock. A picture smudged and worn from countless moments clenched tight. The boy spoke in halting French. "Merci for seeing us." The Rock sank down until he was eye level with the boy, voice shaking. "Thank you for reminding me why I started." Around them, the silence gave way to soft applause. Not the thundering applause of a stadium, but the quiet, sacred sound of belonging. 6 months later, the Hope and Courage Center in Ouagadougou was no longer just a building. It was a beacon. The classrooms were full. The courtyard rang with laughter. The dusty walls had been painted in bold, hopeful strokes by volunteers and students. The boy named Maddie was no longer shy and frightened. He was teaching younger children to read, to box, to stand tall. President Ibrahim Traoré stood in the courtyard one morning, hands crossed behind his back, looking over the bustling scene. He felt the sting of pride and belonging. It was belonging he hadn't felt as a boy, belonging he had promised himself he would give to others. "Ibrahim," said a voice. The president turned. The Rock stood in the courtyard, towering and strong as ever, yet softened by emotion. He had returned quietly, unannounced, not for cameras, not for applause, but for belonging. "My brother," the rock said quietly, "look at this place. You built this. You built this for every boy like the boy you were, and every boy like the boy I was." Traoré smiled, brushing dust from his hands. "We built this. You gave strength to the boy I was. I gave strength to the boy you were. Together we gave strength to the boy this place will raise for tomorrow." The rock placed a hand on Traoré's shoulder, voice wavering slightly. "6 months ago, I came here for a boy named Maddie. Today, I come for every boy and girl we can save. This is bigger than wrestling, bigger than politics, bigger than both of us. This is belonging. This is a chance for every boy to rise, and for every girl to stand tall." A sound bubbled from the courtyard, a laugh. The boy named Maddie was playing with a younger boy, teaching him how to guard with clenched fists and an open heart. The rock watched, swallowing hard. "That boy is going to lead one day," the rock said. "He already is," replied Traoré. That evening, the sun sank low over Ouagadougou, bathing the city in gold. The rock and Traoré stood on a quiet hill overlooking the city. Between them, a cream-colored envelope. The rock pulled it out and handed it to Traoré. "This is where it started," the rock said quietly. "The letter you sent me, the words you gave that boy long ago. I want you to have it back. Not because I don't treasure it, but because it doesn't belong to one man anymore. It belongs to this land, to every boy and girl who needs to be reminded, you matter." Traoré accepted it with shaking hands. The paper was worn, its edges soft from countless moments. The rock had pulled it out and pressed it to his chest. "My brother," Traoré said quietly, voice shaking. "You came when I was a boy. You came when I was a president. And you came when I was just a man. You gave strength when strength felt too far. You gave belonging when belonging felt like a whisper. You came for one boy, and you stayed for an entire generation. The rock came, and the boy rose. But the boy didn't rise alone. He rose with a brother. And for that, I will carry this letter until the stars forget their names." They embraced long and deep as the sun sank behind them. A year later, the Hope and Courage Center had become a symbol across Africa and beyond. Similar centers rose in rural villages across Burkina Faso and in neighboring nations. The Rock and President Traoré spoke to the United Nations about belonging, about the scars that unite, about how strength can come from vulnerability. A boy named Maddie spoke to a global audience, flanked by The Rock and Traoré. "I am only a boy, but I learned that even lions can cry, even giants can fall, even leaders can rise from pain. Today, I speak for every boy and every girl across the world who needs to hear this one truth. You matter. You belong. You can rise, not because you have strength alone, but because together we can carry strength for each other." The applause shook the room, not for a boy, a president, or an actor, but for belonging itself. Back in Ouagadougou, in the heart of the Hope and Courage Center, a cream-colored envelope rests framed upon the wall. Not as a relic, but as a reminder. Dear Mr. Dwayne Johnson, my name is Ibrahim Traoré. You are proof that a boy from nowhere can stand before giants. You are proof that belonging can cross borders, oceans, and scars. Below it, a plaque. Here a boy became a president. Here a man became a brother. Here belonging became a force for a world that forgot how to rise. And in that space, where dust meets dreams, where scars teach strength, countless children walk past every day, brushing their fingers across that letter, knowing that belonging doesn't ask where you came from, only where you can rise.